All right, good evening. It is 6:02 p.m. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board for May 4th, 2023. I am Vice Chair Amelia Aboff. With me tonight are Jahan Habib, Debbie Howard-Easton, Michael McNeely, and Luke Schuster. We are also without our clerk tonight, and Jahan has very nicely volunteered to play that role this evening as well. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Somerville Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. A recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of this agenda. We have 4 items before us tonight. One is the approval of minutes, which we will take up first, and then we have 3 cases, 620 Broadway, 1 McGrath Highway, and 51 Prospect Street. We will take those out of order, handling 620 Broadway as an open case that was continued first, followed by 51 Prospect Street, and then on to 1 McGrath. So first, I will ask for the minutes from February 16th, 2023. Has everyone had the opportunity to review those meeting minutes? Okay. Are there any edits or corrections to them? Okay. Seeing none, I move to approve the February 16th, 2023 meeting minutes, seconded by Jahan. Raisa, will you call the roll, please?
This is Raisa speaking. Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard-Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Excellent, we have minutes. And I will ask Jahan to read the notice for 51 Prospect Street into the record at this time so that we have taken care of that at the top of the meeting. Jahan?
Sure, Madam Acting Chair. So in my capacity as Acting Clerk, I'm reading to the record 51 Prospect Street, PNZ 21-181. Eversource Energy seeks to establish minor utility facility use in the commercial core and mid-rise 4 zoning districts, which requires a special permit.
Thank you. So we will take that up as our second case this evening, but going now to 620 Broadway, which is before us for both a site plan approval and special permit to develop a cannabis retail sales use in the commercial core 5 district. We heard from this applicant a few weeks ago, and I believe we will have additional dialogue this evening with both the case planner and with the applicant team. Raisa, are there members of the applicant team who would like to present any updated materials, or should we begin with, I know there were some questions to staff.
This is Raisa speaking. If the applicant team would like to speak, if you can please raise your hand. That way I know to unmute you. I see Bill Proea. Bill, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. This is Bill Proea. I'm here for Botanica LLC and 620 Broadway LLC. I would just like to just recap quickly. Last time there was a request for some additional information and some comments we thought from the public that we should add some information on as well. So we did provide a letter to the board back on April 13th, I think it was, dated April 12th. So hope the board found that helpful, and didn't really want to take some time right now to discuss it, but just wanted to bring the board's attention to that matter. And I think it makes sense to just go right to Emily if she's here.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. So I don't believe that there were any additional concerns that staff felt needed to be addressed. I did want to note that staff have confirmed with ISD that there are no outstanding compliance issues with this project. And we have also confirmed with mobility staff that we are fully comfortable with the board voting on this matter with the proposed conditions, and that with those conditions, further action would be taken with the applicant prior to building permits and certificate of occupancy stages to address any concerns or outstanding information that's needed for the project. But that does not need to be addressed prior to a board decision in the staff's perspective.
Thank you. Can I ask if the applicant is prepared to give any presentation on the current scheme for loading that is envisioned for the building? I think that there was a request at the end of the last meeting to provide a more fulsome explanation of how both trash and deliveries would be handled here.
Yes, this is Bill again. I could turn it over to Estelin Kambasacha. I think he should be on to discuss that. And not sure.
This is Raisa speaking. I can make Estelin into a presenter.
That would be great. Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking again. Estelin, you have been made into a presenter. You should be able to share your screen.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen or not yet, right?
We could previously.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Is this the floor plan that you guys are seeing? Yes. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Estelin Kambasacha. I work for Peter Quinn Architects. And in regards to the trash issue, as Peter commented last presentation, we are proposing to have the trash all screened in the back of the building, and it will be carried out through this pathway to the front at the scheduled times to be determined by the tenant and the applicant in a later date. The loading, I would have to defer that to Bill to see if they have had any further discussions with the city and with the engineer to figure that out.
Yes, thanks, Estelin. So this is Bill Proya again. So the loading issue would, I think, and Emily can elaborate on this as necessary, is being dealt with by a condition, a proposed condition in the site plan and or special permit decision that will determine a place for loading along the frontage of the building in collaboration with mobility and other relevant departments. And so that's how we envision going forward.
Madam Chair, through you, I can provide further comment on that. There is a condition that is proposed that will be attached to the special permit requiring the applicant to submit a revised transportation access plan that would show a loading area within 300 feet of the property. This would need to be reviewed and approved by the mobility director.
Thank you very much. I will turn to discussion with my colleagues shortly because I don't mean to exclude them from the conversation, but I would just like to note that the absence of any information about the loading or what I would assume will be commercial trash pickups and the area needed for those in the PAP that was submitted as part of this application project process was confusing to me, since for other projects on even where there is no on-site loading, there has typically been that detail provided. And I think watchers of this board are well aware that conflicts between loading trucks and bike lanes are a item that this board is very attuned to and proactive about. And since this applicant came before us last, the city issued its bicycle network plan that identifies this very stretch of Broadway as the #1 and #2 priority for installing new bike lane infrastructure. So while I have a great deal of trust in our colleagues at Mobility, I am inclined to feel that this board should have the opportunity to review an updated TAP that takes into account those competing uses and provides a fuller update, since the original TAP called for off-site or on-site loading, which is no longer the case. So I will leave that there and ask if my colleagues have any other questions for the applicant at this, or for staff at this time.
Madam Chair, I apologize. May I jump in again? There is one thing I forgot to mention related to the mobility conditions earlier. In my review with Mobility to confirm that they were comfortable with the proposed conditions, there was a request from them that the first condition related to mobility as proposed for the site plan approval be amended very slightly to instead read Botanica LLC shall commit to annual monitoring and reporting of the appointment-only recreational marijuana operations model. Data collection shall follow the mobility management plan submittal requirements set forth by the City of Somerville, and shall include statistically valid travel surveys of employees and customers, and a status update on the implementation of TDM measures. So that is the updated condition as Mobility requested. The only change to this was that it noted that data collection would follow the mobility management plan submittal requirements set forth by the city. Everything else in the proposed condition remains the same.
Thank you very much for that update. Turning to just general discussion of this application, I will hold my concerns other than the one transportation issue, but are there other observations or discussion of this application from my colleagues on the board? John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for staff. With respect to the update that Emily has provided through you, Madam Chair, I would like to ask, when it comes to the monitoring mechanism, what does that entail? I understand that the applicant would be obligated to provide information and data, but I guess I'm just trying to understand, when it comes to mobility in particular, what is this a dialogue, or is this a submission of report and then a response from Mobility? How does the process work? The reason why I'm asking this question is because, as Madam Chair mentioned earlier, regarding the location and the loading unloading concerns that I share, and I would just love to better understand what the monitoring looks like.
Madam Chair, through you, Emily Hutchings again. Thank you. I will admit that I am not I'm not aware of the details of how Mobility requests information. I know that they have a very specific set of requirements through their mobility management plan submittal requirements. These have been refined, I believe, over the last few years, so they fully understand the data that they need to create sufficient analysis and make decisions. And it is an annual reporting requirement. So if there is discussion going on and communication. I'm not sure if they feel there is additional information they want, how much more they can require. But I do know that it's an annual reporting system that provides an opportunity for dialogue.
I understand. Thank you so much for this. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Michael, I saw your hand next.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I too share the mobility concerns here as well. And can staff just elaborate a little bit more on what that dialogue really means? I am worried about this, being constructed and then getting that report back, and then us the city through the mobility department, writing a sternly worded letter, and then things just kind of falling on deaf ears. I'd like there to be a little bit more of a tangible response, or a way to enforce some type of response to feel totally comfortable with kind of stepping back from this without actually having visibility into the solution here. Is there anything more you could add to that, Emily?
Yes, so I think there's a bit of a miscommunication going on with what is required for annual reporting versus what additional information needs to be submitted prior to the issuance of a building permit or a certificate of occupancy. So there are multiple conditions that are proposed attached to the staff memo that's been provided related to mobility. One is for annual reporting and monitoring, but there are the appointment only recreational marijuana operations model, and data collection about how employees and customers travel. But separate from that, there is an updated transportation access plan that is required that needs to show an appropriate loading zone and a loading plan. And again, this is separate from any data collection and annual reporting. And there are other transportation demand management measures that must be adhered to as established by the proposed conditions. So these are all different things that must be adhered to. The monitoring and reporting of customer and employee travel data is only one part of annual monitoring and reporting, but there is other transportation demand management that must be adhered to as well.
I would suspect that some of my colleagues may share my concerns on sort of both of those fronts, both on the initial setup and on the idea that when this applicant comes back to the city to move forward from an appointment only model, the additional traffic flow that may be generated from that and the self-report and the reporting that will be required to resubmit for that. But I believe, if I remember correctly, that they would be submitting an updated set of transportation materials at that time to move forward from the appointment only model. Is that correct? And that would be based on the report that is being done on an annual basis.
Madam Chair, that's correct. At this point, marijuana retail sales are required to be an appointment only model. That is the same across the city of Somerville. If that were ever to change, completely updated transportation information would need to be submitted at that time. That is part of one of the conditions that is being proposed.
Thank you for confirming.
Hi, this is Bill.
Yes, sorry.
Madam Chair, thank you. Just to be recognized, if I could. If I'm understanding some of the comments here, is that the board's concern is that the board won't have another look at that, the loading zone designation, before it's approved by mobility? Is that the concern I'm understanding this evening?
That's correct. It is typically the process that the board hears a case when a full set of materials are in front of it. And in this case, the TAP that was submitted is incomplete in that it does not reflect any information about how loading will be handled for this building that will have regular drop-offs for multiple uses, presumably cash pickups, and will be in conflict with a bike lane on a major bike corridor that the city has further solidified as sort of its intention for our city bike network. And we have also had, as I think some of the more tenured members of this board will recall, exhaustive conversations with other marijuana use applicants about things like the distance between the loading zone and the front door, or the door in which things are being brought into because of concerns about security from the neighbors, for instance. So it's, I realize that it may seem like a very sort of trivial aspect of the plan, but I think that in this case, in this location, it is in fact something that I, as one member of the board, feel is important for us to understand more fully.
Thank you. I get that. So may I suggest a couple things, and you let me know how you feel about these. But just for maybe some quick background. So there are 2 curb cuts right now that exist for this property, and the city's preference was to not have those curb cuts active anymore. So that was part of the design. And, you know, it's taken some time to get to this point, you know, pre-filing hearings, neighborhood hearings and things. And so the final sort of configuration of the bike lane, the sidewalk, signage, things like that out there. And I think, you know, maybe Emily can talk about this as well. We're not completely set while we were going through the review. And so I think that's mostly the reason why we're going to have to revise the transportation access plan, things like that. But may I suggest that there's an additional requirement that the planning board review that as well? And I think what is being said right now is the board won't have a chance to look at what mobility and the applicant may be able to come up with, and that the board would feel more comfortable if we were to come back to the board to take a look at it as well.
Yes, I am suggesting that you come back to the board with an updated TAP that includes the proposed loading area.
And I'm just asking about the timing on that. Again, it's not likely that we would want to keep the public hearing open to get that done. It seems like it's going to be probably a pretty extensive review, time consuming, which it should be because we want to get it right. So, you know, what I was proposing is that there'd be an express condition that not only does that have to happen through mobility review and planning staff review, but the board would get another look at it as well. But that the special permit would be granted with that condition.
I understand your desire to have the special permit granted ahead of having that issue resolved. And that is not something that I currently feel comfortable with, and I understand your timing considerations, but the staff memo dated March 10th reflected the fact that this piece of information was missing, and the fact that you have not advanced that in the intervening almost 2 months is not cause for this board to pass over its obligations.
I understand. I appreciate the comments. I think it just allows other aspects of the project to go forward, and I don't think your perspective is yours and valid, of course. I just think it still provides the complete review that you would have. It just happens at a later time, and we'll be back in this forum with that information at that point. And, you know, it wouldn't be finalized until the board approved it.
I'm not going to call for a vote for this tonight, in part because one of the criteria for site plan approval is having a complete set of information, and it is my perspective as acting chair that we do not currently have a complete application in front of us. You are welcome to try this line of dialogue with Michael Capiano when he is back at our next meeting. I would suggest that you advance an updated tab in the meantime if you are concerned about further delays to this project schedule. I do have other concerns and questions about this application that I would be happy to discuss this evening. I don't know if other of my colleagues also have any further thoughts, but we can also leave those for a subsequent meeting if you prefer.
Mayor, this is Bill Purray again. Thank you. Of course, it's the board's preference, but if there are other concerns that we might be able to discuss tonight and then provide additional information, that would be helpful to us. In light of that, there probably won't be a decision made this evening. So being informed of what other concerns there might be or additional requests for information, again, would be helpful if the board wouldn't mind doing that this evening. Then we can at least get those items addressed.
Absolutely, thank you. I will open up the floor to my colleagues and any other concerns or questions they may have. If there are none, then I will raise the concern or question that I have about the intention around providing solar panels on the building. There are a number of different materials that have been provided in this application that alternately specify that there will be solar panels and that the roof will be solar panel ready, which are slightly different and meaningfully different from my perspective, and a number of other sustainability commitments that appear in documents that the applicant has submitted over the course of its applications to the Licensing Commission as well as the Planning Board. And I believe that because the building did receive the variance to be a one-story building in an area that was meant to be a 3 to 5 story building that is directly across from a train station and in an area that was really intentionally by the city upzoned and called out as being a high density parcel. And I do understand the reasons that this DBA granted that variance and that you are pursuing the single story building. I would love to understand better the sustainability commitments that your team is prepared to make in light of that variance really running counter to the city's sustainability goals and targets.
Thank you. Okay. I will take that as a question and to be answered in due course. So I will work on that as well.
Thank you. As my colleagues may be aware, had the variance not been granted, were the building at the full scale that was originally proposed on its materials that were submitted for the host community agreement, it would be required to be LEED Gold certifiable. So I'm curious whether that's something that you'd entertain. There are a number of specific individual sustainability strategies that are called out, and I do appreciate that. That includes highly sustainable materials and high R value insulation materials and highly efficient lighting systems. Let's see, I'm just looking here. There was also a note that you'd be providing electric car charging stations, which I understand, since there's not parking on site, is probably no longer under consideration, but to the extent, I'm not sure the extent to which the city might be looking for street spaces that could support electric car infrastructure. That's a conversation that has come up at all, since that was something in your application materials, it would be great to understand the status of that. Let's see. I'm so sorry, I'm just referring to my notes from your application materials.
Sure.
Yeah, Botanica will shape its facility to be environmentally sustainable during both the construction and operation phases. Just would like to understand in more detail sort of the commitments that you that either the 620 Broadway or the Botanica applicant are planning to make. Yeah, that'd be great.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions or comments on this application, I think we can probably continue this item to our next meeting, which is scheduled for May 18th.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. There was one thing I did wanted to maybe raise again, and Emily maybe can help as well. It was the condition about integrating the MBTA parcel into this development, and I know I addressed it in the letter, and I just wanted to let the planning board know. We were asked to talk to staff about that and try to come up with some proposed revisions or an amendment for the board to consider. And we were informed that we really can't do that except at a public hearing. And so I just wanted to let you know that we haven't made any progress on that because of that requirement that it happened at a hearing.
Is there an update to that proposed condition that either you or staff are prepared to discuss at this time?
So Madam Chair, through you, if I may, Emily Hutchings again. So we have confirmed that staff really can't discuss or negotiate proposed conditions with applicants. This is a condition that staff has proposed to you, the planning board, and we believe it's necessary for the approval of this application. The condition as written will ensure a continued communication with the city, with the MBTA, to ensure that the open space is integrated. We don't believe that any changes to the language are necessary, but it is the prerogative of the planning board to consider that language, discuss that amongst yourselves and with the applicant, and ask staff for any clarifying information as necessary to determine whether you would like any changes to the condition or if you would like to leave it as is.
Thank you so much, Emily. Just pulling up that language. I don't know if other folks have it in front of them, or if Risa, you might be able to pull it up if you have the proposed language, if Risa or Emily have the language to pull up on the screen.
Madam Chair, I do have the condition, although I don't believe I can pull it up on the screen at this point. The condition states that the project design, including the location of the transformer, must not preclude integration between the proposed open space on the west side of the site and the adjacent parcel of land currently owned by the MBTA, in parentheses MBL 27-L-1. So that is the full proposed condition. And to remind the board that open space on the west side of the site, as it reads on the site plan, it's the area to the right of the site that is adjacent to the railroad tracks.
Thank you, Emily. That condition seems to me to capture the intent of the staff team and of the city in requiring that coordination, notwithstanding the applicant's vaguely threatening commentary on it in the letter that they submitted. So the applicant, if you'd like to clarify your position in this forum, by all means.
May I jump in here? Yep. Hi, Bill. I will jump in here. May I share my screen again? So the
name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Stalin. I'm from Peter Quinn. So the area that the planning member is talking about is this area here that would complete this triangle shape of this property or the site. And as you could see, the lot is the triangle area would have plenty of access from the sidewalk, and the transformer itself, we don't believe that it will impede any access to the area in the future. But we would be open to discuss it further with the planning members.
Thank you. To be perfectly honest, this is another item that makes me feel as though this application is incomplete, because in the staff memo, there was a note that the transformer in its current location was identified by ISD in February as not being compliant, and the transformer does not appear to me to have moved since this was submitted to us. So I'm unclear at this point on whether the proposed location of the transformer shown on these plans is in fact the location that it is intended to be sited, or how much more coordination there is to do with any level of staff on the location of the transformer.
Yeah,
Madam
no,
Chair,
go ahead.
I apologize if I can interrupt through you, Madam Chair. I did clarify with ISD that the transformer does meet the zoning requirements, that an updated plan was provided following ISD's comments with clarification that the transformer is sufficiently separated from the property line and right of way, and that ISD simply needed to make sure that that separation was shown and clear.
Got it, thank you. So the transformer location as shown on the plans is the transformer location that the applicant intends to move forward with. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And Emily, is it the city's perspective that the transformer needs to be relocated in order to provide connectivity to that open space?
Not necessarily, Madam Chair, that the transformer location currently complies. What the proposed condition does is it ensures that in future, as the open spaces between the properties are integrated, that communicate, and as the property is developed, that a continued discussion happens to make sure that the open space can be integrated and that the location of the transformer does not negatively impact that integration. So if it happens to need to be shifted, that discussion can happen, and that there are no negative impacts moving forward that can't be addressed by both the applicant and staff.
Thank you very much. That would seem to me to be a very reasonable and not particularly burdensome condition, but did the applicant team want to discuss changes to it?
Yes, thank you. This is Bill Proya. I think we share the same goal, honestly, with coordination of these things. It just seems that the way that condition is written, it doesn't really talk about coordination or discussion. It just seems more unilateral, and it doesn't, from my point of view. I was just hoping that we could say something like that, like we would, the applicant and the city agree to coordinate or to discuss the coordination of these two properties. We're not against that idea, and I think it could be very beneficial for both sides. It just seems one-sided, that's all, the way it's written now. And I was hoping to make it clearer that it was a mutual project that we would engage in. That's the only point I was trying to make.
Understood. I don't think that conditions typically have a lot of commitments forthcoming from the city written into them, but I understand the desire for it to read as coordination, and that's something that the chair and I can discuss with staff offline between this meeting and the next, perhaps. Emily, did that seem like appropriate framework in which to?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I can make myself available for any edits that need to occur.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion on this topic, I will move to continue this case to our next meeting on May 18th, seconded by Jahan. Franca, would you please call the roll?
This is Rice speaking. Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton. Aye. Luke Schuster.
Aye.
All right, we will see you again. Thank you. We will next take up 51 Prospect Street. We previously read this into the record, so we can begin with, does staff have some opening context for this presentation they would like to provide before we hear from the applicant?
Sure. Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair. Andrew Grabinski, Planning, Preservation, and Zoning. I've been the case planner for this project for almost 2 years now. So just to give some background to the board, the Eversource, the applicant, first applied for a lot merger, which was administratively reviewed by the Director of Planning, Preservation, and Zoning, and ultimately approved to merge 2 lots into 1. Fast forward a few months, they applied for a special permit for a minor utility facility use for the addition of a new transformer at the existing site at 51 Prospect. If those who don't know where that is, it's basically right across the street from the new T station and D2 tower. The design of the project has gone through an evolution. Basically, the applicant will give a good background when they provide their presentation, but the changes that occurred over the last 2 years have been really due to the lots of input from the public in conversations with elected officials and city staff. So we're happy to the project's finally getting to the board. It's going to provide much needed electricity, especially for that region of the city, which is undergoing significant growth at the moment, not just with the US2 master plan, but as well as in Boynton Yards. But it's also key to point out that the substation is a regional electricity, providing energy regionally, so not just Somerville, but as well as Cambridge, getting its source from the plant in Everett. So it's an important part of the grid moving forward, especially as the city is moving to electrify. So it's needed, especially within the next 2 years, as according to Eversource, and they will provide this information as well, or we may exceed our limits. So it's very much needed. Other than that, there's a few things that I've heard from ISD today regarding the types of next steps after the special permit. Usually with buildings in other commercial buildings or the C of O stage before everyone moves in and the buildings are online. In this case, since it really is in a building, it's just electrical equipment. There is no CEO stage, so it would just be a final inspection. I wanted to take note of that because there's several staff recommended conditions that have prior to certificate of occupancy. That was the assumption we were working under until today. So I wanted to make you all aware that those conditions would need to be revised to reflect the proper timing of additional next steps. Other than that, again, it's one special permit just for the new transformer, though the applicant is providing several improvements to the existing substation. Other than that, I'm here to answer any follow-up questions after the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if the applicant will identify themselves so Risa can unmute you, please.
This is Rice speaking. I do have a list of speakers today. I believe the presenter tonight is Meredith Barik. Meredith, I will be making you a presenter. You should be able to share your screen now. I'm also unmuting Jason Wright. Jason, you have been unmuted. You're self-muted on your end. I also have name for Paul Graham. Paul, you have been unmuted. You're self-muted on your end. I also have a name for Dwan Boyce. Dwan, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end. Benjamin Magia, you've also been unmuted. You're self-muted on your end. Lee Brandenburg, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end. John M. Zico, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end. Amsa Manga, you've also been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end. Andrea Reagan, you've also been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end. Last two names, William Connolly, you have been unmuted. You're self-muted on your end. If you're not speaking, if you can please mute yourself. Jessica Eagleheart, you've also been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
We might be breaking some kind of a record for applicant team members.
Okay, can folks hear me? This is
Yes.
Meredith. I'm sorry, can anybody hear me?
Meredith, we can hear you, but if you're sharing the screen, we cannot yet see it.
Okay, I apologize. I actually can't see anyone on the panel, but I can hear everyone. And I just wanted to make sure I was audible, and I will, bear with me. I will share my screen. So I don't know what you can see right now. Can you see a deck or a Word document?
A deck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience, and I will be happy to get started. So Chair Aboff and members of the board, again, thank you for having us this evening and hearing our petition. On behalf of the Eversource team, I'd also like to thank the Somerville planning staff, Director Lewis and City Planner Grominski for their guidance as Mr. Grominski said, over the last 2 years. They have held us accountable to ensure the city's residents are getting not only what is expected, but also what they deserve. And I know you have all received an extensive application package this evening, and I have about a 5.5-minute presentation. So I will jump into that. All right. Before diving into the nuts and bolts of the project, I want to provide some context. As noted, this process began with the city more than 2 years ago, and even in that relatively short period of time, the electric landscape has changed. Public policies at all levels of government are driving the need to electrify, and the private and public sectors are responding. As you are all well aware, the pace of electrification in Somerville has skyrocketed. Adding a third transformer to Eversource's Prospect Street substation is essential for reliably meeting the city's future electrical demand. And the third transformer is urgently needed and will be used to serve development that is either planned, already approved, or under construction in areas such as Boynton Yards, Union Square, and the future Somerville Gateway Innovation Center. Eversource continually tracks and forecasts electrical load growth over a 10-year horizon. Forecasting demand using the current electrical load, along with these new and projected developments, shows the capacity of Somerville's Prospect Street substation being exceeded in the summer of 2024, jeopardizing the company's ability to provide reliable electric service. Eversource is ready to help Somerville meet this moment of economic growth and decarbonization. And to do so, it is critical that we get the third transformer installed and operational as soon as possible. Tonight, we are asking for your support to move this project forward and ensure we can deliver sufficient electricity to the city every day, all day. The area for the proposed third transformer is on the northeast side of the Eversource property and will be accompanied by associated switchgear, capacitor banks, a breaker, a riser, lightning masts, and associated wiring and cabling. The vast majority of the proposed construction will occur on vacant Eversource-owned land adjacent to but outside of the existing substation fence. Once complete, the new construction will be enveloped within the property using both perimeter walls and fencing. Over the last year, we have worked with community members, elected officials, and the planning staff to incorporate feedback and present designs based on that feedback during 3 different neighborhood meetings. The details of those meetings and the changes that were made were submitted with the application, and I'd like to highlight what we believe to be some of the key improvements made as a result of the community's input. We are proposing enclosing the new equipment with a building-like facade wrapping from Newton Street to Prospect Street. This wall will also serve as a canvas for public art. We are proposing shielding the existing equipment along the Prospect Street and, where possible, the Webster Ave boundaries with a semi-transparent fencing, which will provide visual screening while still allowing lines of sight through the substation property. In addition to installation of the 3rd transformer, we are proposing strategies to improve the overall look of the existing substation equipment, including replacing the current perimeter fence in its entirety, including the removal of the barbed wire. We will be removing the lattice tower and dish antenna, as well as the rusty metal shields atop the interior wall. And wherever possible, we'll be cleaning and repainting the existing buildings and structures. Working through multiple design iterations takes time, and I want to extend our thanks to the direct abutters, the civic associations, Council President Ewan Campen, and the city planning staff who gave us their time and their perspectives and challenged us to think of creative solutions for a very complex site. We are committed to continuing our work with the community, including the Somerville Arts Council, to confirm the final design for the solid enclosure, the semi-transparent perimeter fencing, and installing substation compliant native plantings for the improved landscaping. This project is a top priority for Eversource. Maintaining a continuous, adequate electric supply to Somerville is a regulatory obligation. With development and electrification expanding rapidly, the situation is now urgent. We are at risk of demand exceeding capacity at the Prospect Street substation by next summer. With a 14 to 16-month timeline for construction, the company's ability to provide reliable electric service is in jeopardy. Over the past 2 years, we feel we have worked diligently and collaboratively with the community members and city staff to present you with a proposal that serves its utility purpose while also enhancing the neighborhood. And we will continue this collaboration to make the final fencing and screening elements the very best they can be for this dynamic neighborhood. Tonight, we are asking for approval of this project so that we may begin construction of this critical infrastructure without delay. Thank you very much. That ends my presentation, and I will, I'm going to click to stop sharing. Again, I appreciate your help and patience, as I can't, for whatever reason, cannot see the panel, but I can hear everyone and happy to field questions and direct any to our subject matter experts.
Thank you very much for that informative and concise presentation. I do have one question for clarification before we begin, because I do expect there'll be a number of people here with comments, and there's something I'd like to make sure we are all on the same page on. It is my understanding that the actual scope of the City of Somerville permitting process that you are in is relatively narrow, and that many of the improvements that you are proposing tonight are in fact being prospectively undertaken by Eversource sort of as a good citizen, but are not really subject to board review and feedback. If you could, if either you or staff could please sort of just clarify that for us so that everyone here tonight has the same understanding, I would appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Mr. Gurminski, if you want to start with that one.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
You.
Of course. So yes, basically, any sort of this transformer is considered a minor utility facility use, or it encompasses that use, this structure, this electrical equipment. And only, again, the new transformer needs a special permit. That's how it's permitted in Somerville. However, there's no additional land use processes like site plan approval. The rest of the site is sort of permitted what we like to call general maintenance. So they may need to get a building permit through IST, but there's no discretionary review for those, for that side of the site. However, because of community input and sort of these community mitigation efforts, they are upgrading the whole facility. So the board, however, because of these improvements, the board can provide input and condition because of these community mitigation measures. It is within your realm to condition the whole site. But again, the specific zoning requirements related to screening of the mechanical equipment only applies to the new transformer, and then the general fencing standards in the code don't apply to the whole structure, the structure as a whole, or the site as a whole, sorry, because it's on a building. So it's unique, right, in the sense that we don't call out these types of structures actually in the code other than being mechanical equipment. So frontage standards don't really apply because it's on a building. So that's why I believe it's section 10.5, fences and walls do not apply to this project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments from the board before we open it to public testimony? Okay. I do accept we'll have a number of folks here tonight to comment on this case. So Raisa, I defer to your judgment on whether we think a timer is needed. We've just lost Luke, so hopefully he'll be back shortly.
This is Raisa speaking. Emily Hutchings will be sharing her screen with a timer.
Great. And I believe we have a number of representatives of various levels of government in the audience this evening. It is typically their privilege to speak first if this is the matter they are here to speak to. So I think I saw both Representative Connolly and JT Scott here, perhaps among others. If we could start there. And then we'll move on to folks in favor of the application.
This is Raisa speaking. At this time, I do see Councillor JT Scott and some few hands raised. Would you like to take JT Scott first?
Yes, please. Thank you.
This is Raisa.
Planning staff, members of the board, I am not an elected official with regard to this matter. I'm recused from it. I'm simply here as a member of the public, so I will wait my turn.
Okay.
This is Raisa speaking. The first hand I see raised is Michael Katz. Michael, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Okay, I believe I am unmuted. I am an abutter and also a board member of Union Square Main Streets. We do not have an issue with the third transformer or the general idea of the surround shown in this presentation and the last general public meeting. We are concerned that public art and the final design should not be looked at separately, but they should be looked at as part of a complete unit, and that the final design should be approved by the Urban Design Committee because it's such a crucial position in the entry to Union Square. Also, I think we should ask the city engineer to take a quick look at the assertion of Eversource to confirm that there is no way within their property to fully screen the units, the old units from Webster Street. Again, because this is such a major entry point to Union Square and Somerville. And that's all I have to say.
This is Raisa speaking. The next hand I see raised is Mike Rossetti. Mike, you have been unmuted.
Raisa, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that at this time we're going to do individuals wishing to speak in favor or with questions to the application, in case there was any confusion around that. Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking. Mike Rossetti, I believe, re-raised his hand. Mike, you have been unmuted.
No, I did not want to speak. That's a mistake.
This is Raisa speaking. The next hand I see is Representative Mike Connolly. You have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and good evening to the chair and the honorable members of the board. My name is State Representative Mike Connolly. I represent parts of Somerville in the vicinity of Union Square, including the new Green Line station, as well as parts of Cambridge. And overall, the district I represent is impacted pretty much in every direction by this project on a larger scale. Certainly, I appreciate and understand the efforts that Eversource has made and recognize that electrification is indeed vital to our energy future. At the same time, I would offer sort of a bit of perspective to say that this is, on some sense, a planning failure, because, we've known for decades that the Green Line extension would be coming to Somerville. That's always been the plan. And so now we find ourselves with some of the most prized land in the city of Somerville, an area that I know the city and so many of us have worked so hard to develop and to bring amenities to, and yet directly across the street from the new station will be this substation. And certainly in the district I represent, there was a proposal to put one of these substations in the East Cambridge neighborhood. Residents working with the city, and I was engaged as well, we pushed back on that, and ultimately we were able to encourage Eversource and a local real estate developer to work out a deal to relocate that substation out of the East Cambridge neighborhood, and it's going to be put under a building in Kendall Square. And so I only share that with the board. I understand the realities that you're faced with this application, but if nothing else, maybe a thought for the future. One thought could be to add a condition to this approval to actually look to require that kind of longer range planning, to say that, maybe 10 years out, that there's no substation in this location, and then that parcel could be potentially unlocked for higher and better use in our community. Certainly, I want to say thank you to the council president, Ben Ewan-Campen, who has, in his council capacity, has been working on this. And, he's been in close contact with me with his thoughts. I know he has a committee hearing tonight, but he sent a letter to you. I certainly want to echo some of the main points of the letter that he sent, including asking for a binding written commitment that the substation will never be an impediment to a future extension of the Green Line to Porter Square. There's also, concerns around the appearance of this substation, and that it would be important to really engage with the Urban Design Commission regarding this. We've already heard about the fencing, and I appreciate the fact that the plans that have been shown tonight won't be solid black fencing, but rather something that has some transparency with it so that it doesn't feel like a completely blank wall. We are hoping that trees and shrubs will be added and that there'll be native species. We were concerned to see that in some of the drawings there were non-native plants being suggested, and certainly want to encourage working with the Somerville Arts Council to really fulfill that public art program, which certainly would be an improvement. So, you know, with that, I totally appreciate and understand the choices you're facing here. You know, I just wanted to really be here to make that point that I hope longer term we can think about other locations for these facilities, and that ultimately this incredibly valuable parcel could be considered for a higher and better use in years to come. So I appreciate those comments, and certainly want to say thank you to Eversource for all the engagement they've had with our community, and I look forward to continuing to be engaged. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking. The next hand I see raised is Jim McGinnis. Jim, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Hi, thanks very much for this chance to talk about this project. First, I want to make it very clear that I understand this is essential and that we have to expand our electric capacity in the area. And so I really only want to speak about the question of screening the substation, especially the existing part from Prospect and now an equally major road in terms of being a gateway to Union Square, which is Webster. I want to recognize the fact that Eversource has been evolving and improving their design in several public meetings, and I think that's great. However, I actually think that the project would benefit from additional architectural resources, whether it be Urban Design Commission or another entity. I think we can do better. And I would set sort of two goals. One is that to the extent possible, that the equipment is screened from public view, both from Prospect Street and from Webster. The current plan, the current material proposed is actually only a little bit more opaque than a chain link fence. I think something like architectural louvered panels would be an alternative. But that's something that needs to be worked out. The other suggestion I'd have is to see if there aren't ways to fill the gap in the screening on the portion that's seen from Webster abutting the right-of-way of MBTA. Right now, it's very odd to have that totally open while we're screening the rest. So anyway, again, I want to indicate my support for the project as a whole, but I would hope we have a way of making a better design with more complete screening. Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking. Jim, before you go, if you can please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Jim McGinnis, 26 Bow Street, Somerville.
Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, Raisa.
This is Raisa speaking. I do not see any more hands raised at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, so turning now to anyone who wishes to speak with concerns about the application, please.
This is Raisa speaking. I do see Councillor JT Scott's hand raised again. I'm going to unmute him.
Thank you. I would once again remind both staff and the planning board that I'm here as a private citizen and direct abutter on this matter, not acting in my capacity as an elected official in any way. With that said, hopefully. Good, great. With that said, I do have concerns about this. I've had concerns about this application throughout. I'd like to thank Representative Connolly for bringing up the example of the Greater Cambridge Energy Project, where, again, facing these kind of supply and distribution demands in East Cambridge, the choice was made to actually create a much more substantial substation below ground. In fact, there's going to be a park on top of it. Somerville deserves at least as much respect as Cambridge does, our neighborhood does. You know, it's not just about the substation, it's about the underground infrastructure that's going to come up through Cambridge, up through potentially Boynton Yards. There are other sites for this, and to whatever extent we can require future relocation of this, again, to make the best use of that land, to show the greatest respect for this neighborhood, I'd implore you to do that. Barring that, or in the interim time, if we are going to consider this station as an interim condition, I would agree with Mr. McGinnis and all of my other neighbors who have expressed concerns about the incomplete nature of the design choices here, and also just the question of why a more complete screening cannot be accomplished on this site or required on this site. So just speaking as a direct abutter at 35 Prospect Street, I appreciate your time and attention to the matter. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking. The next hand I see raised is Jennifer Civiteo Hilario. You have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end. This is Raisa speaking. Jennifer, can you hear us?
Hi, my name is Jennifer Civitella Hilario. I'm at 9 Bolton Street in Somerville. My remarks are regarding 2 points of inequity that I see with this project. One is I think it's quite unfair to the city of Somerville to be carrying the extra burden of the energy needs to our neighbors. I didn't see much detail regarding how much of this energy is going to be used by Somerville versus the increased needs of our surrounding cities. The second point of inequity is that this location in this third transformer will be neighbors to 2 planned low-income housing developments. And I just think that's awfully unfair to our community and to our neighbors that is going to be their abutter. Thank you very much.
This is Raisa speaking. I see one more hand for Meredith Porter. Meredith, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Meredith Porter, 104 Josephine Avenue. I'd like to second comments which I've heard from Representative Mike Connolly, from Jim McGinnis, from JT Scott, from Jennifer, who just spoke. I'm concerned about the aesthetics of this. I'm concerned about this as an environmental justice issue, essentially. The proximity to the low-income housing. There may or may not be too much that can be done about this at this point, but I regret that this wonderful real estate, which we're transforming the character of this area, and it seems as though that isn't being recognized in citing this station here. And in any case, I would hope that the screening can be better if this goes through as is, which it looks like it will, that the public art and landscaping can be considered thoroughly. I'd like to see the Urban Design Commission review this if that's possible, or another group. And I'm also concerned about Green Line extension to Porter Square and making sure that this would not interfere with that. And finally, I have a concern. The staff report and planner Graminsky indicated that a lot merger for the property was approved by the Director of Planning, Preservation, and Zoning in the fall of 2021. And the zoning ordinance in 10.1.1.1D on page 445 indicates that lot mergers require site plan approval. And I don't see that any site plan approval was given in conjunction with that. And I'm concerned about this in future lot mergers and lot splits being processed without proper site plan approval. And perhaps someone could address that as well. And thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking. At this time, I do not see any more raised hands.
All right. Before we move on to discussion, can I ask Andrew or Raisa to confirm if we have any details on the last point that was raised regarding the site plan approval for the lot merger?
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. So lot merger or land plotting other than subdivisions, and a subdivision is when a thoroughfare is being provided, that level of review requires planning board approval. However, any other land planning activity is what we call minor site plan approval, where through the rules of policy and procedure, through the planning board and zoning board as well, the director of planning, preservation, and zoning acts as the board. And there's no, it doesn't go through the same process that a regular site plan approval or subdivision would go through. So in this case, a lot merger only required that minor site plan approval. So I hope that clears some things up.
Thank you. And my apologies if I did not say so. We sort of formally closed the oral public comment period. So with that, I'd like to turn over to my colleagues for any questions and discussion, questions to the applicant or to staff at this time. Michael, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you.
No, I realized as I started speaking. Thank you, Madam Chair. So the idea that building more buildings and creating more demand for power could lead to a shortfall in capacity on the sub, that makes a lot of sense to me. Can Eversource better quantify these reliability benefits? Like, what is the projected overload and how much space would this new transformer free up? You know, is this a problem that we're going to run into again 2 years from now?
Madam Chair, would you like me to field that off for the Eversource team or direct for the Eversource team?
Please, thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much for the question. I'm going to turn that over to begin with to my colleague, Maya Benjamins, the Director of Strategic Projects. Maya, would you mind answering that or beginning to answer that?
Absolutely. The question is, how much is the system overloaded, and are we going to see this issue again in 2 years?
Yeah, if you could just better quantify the amount of benefit that this transformer would provide.
Okay, I'll start it off, and then we also do have our system planning team, AMSA, on. So my name is Maya Benjamins, and right now what we're seeing in the system is a rapid growth in Somerville, mainly due to a lot of the new developments coming online, but also in anticipation of electrification for the future. So in our planning studies, we've been updating them annually, but there's additional what we call spot loads or new development coming online that is pushing the Somerville station to its maximum capacity. Right now, the majority of the Somerville area is fed by our Mystic station, which is actually in Everett. And so we're trying to offset some of those issues by transferring some of the new development in Somerville back to Mystic. So it's actually a real problem that we're seeing right now. And the station, what we're anticipating this summer, is actually going to be overloaded. So we're already working on measures to offset that those developments, but we're seeing some potential issues for 2024 that we're trying to work on. I know there were questions about development in City of Cambridge. The Greater Cambridge Energy Program is developed to address development in the entire area of Cambridge, Somerville, and Boston, and create more of a loop of energy. But we're addressing most of the development in Cambridge. So this is a Somerville challenge. And AMSA can talk to that, but it is until the Greater Cambridge station comes online and alleviates a lot of that pressure that we're seeing on the Somerville station with the Somerville development, we are going to have to do interim measures over the next few years, which we're still working on. But once we get to that station being online, where the system will be in a much better place. But that's something that we're working closely with Andrew and other members of the Somerville team, like the director of engineering, to help us come up with ways that we can offset this need. So AMSA, can you quantify the amount that we're looking at, that we're shifting for 2023 during, and when I talk about that, it's during our like peak load times, which is in summer, and then also what we're looking at for 2024 until this comes online?
Yeah, so just like Maya said, we are working to, we have development coming right next to the substation, forward to the Somerville substation, the Boynton Yards, the Somerville Gateway. So those are right next to the substation. But now, because we don't have that transformer in, we are trying to figure out a workaround to serve some of the load that is coming on this year. We're going to pick that up from Mystic. And then that has a limit. We will exhaust that limit this year. Well, even next year, we're going to move about a total of 6 MVA. We'll pick that up from Mystic. And that exhausts all the existing conduits that we have. If not, we're going to have to dig up the streets all the way from Somerville to Everett. So after we do that, hoping to have the third transformer in as soon as possible, it's going to increase the capacity, because right now what we have for purely just around the Somerville substation, the load coming up is about 22 MVA that we have coming. That's about half a transformer. So we're going to have a third transformer. It would increase the capacity for us to pick up this new load, and then it would hold us over till we do have the, when we have the Greater Cambridge project coming to play, we will offload a whole lot more load off of Somerville to that station. So there'll be more capacity available for Somerville load growth, for the local growth at Somerville. I don't know if that explains it for you.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer. Madam Chair, do you mind if I ask one quick follow-up?
Please.
Thank you. So I heard that you are solving the interim problem by, kind of providing a feed from the Mystic. Is there a solution here where you could essentially just reconductor between the sub or where the load is and that generation and not need this transformer? Like, could you just put in a bigger pipe to get the water through essentially?
So this particular load is literally next to the substation. That's the new growth that we have, right? So yeah, this stick on its own is getting overloaded. So there isn't so much support it can offer. We're running out of space there as well. And so when you're like to serve load, you want to be as close as possible to the source. So we've got a source right next to the load. That makes the most, I guess, electrical sense, and to serve the load right there. So it's, based on a ton of factors, that is the best choice to serve it from Somerville versus building new conduits all the way to Everett.
Can I also add to that? Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the question about building a bigger transmission
This is Raisa
line.
speaking. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but if you can please state your name for the record.
Sure. This is Maya Benjamins. The question regarding putting in larger transmission lines, that is something that we're working on right now. We are kicking off a program where we are looking at replacing some of our infrastructure, particularly the lines that are coming from Everett to Somerville to carry more capacity. Those types of projects take at least 6 years to design, permit, and install. So we're looking at that also being a solution that we need to implement. The Greater Cambridge Energy program is already upgrading the circuits going from Somerville. They go from Somerville right now to Boston. So that's we've done something that we call like co-optimization and rolling in reliability for Somerville with a larger capital project. So where that is, that will be part of the solution in the next 4 years. It's not something we can do now. And in the absence of the transformer, which converts the energy to the level that can be given to the customers, we still won't be able to solve the problem.
Thank you for that. I can also appreciate that you guys might get stuck in ISO New England cluster studies, which probably don't help that problem. So thank you. Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
John?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have a few questions, all directed towards the applicant. The first question is to better understand with this third transformer installation and setup, if it's possible to hear a little bit more about what sort of construction and construction mitigation efforts are going to be undertaken. I'm concerned about the abutters. I'm concerned about the location being close to the T station. I'm concerned about pedestrians, and there's sufficient construction activity going on in Boynton Yards and other adjacent areas. And I just want to better understand what Eversource is thinking about the transformer matter.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Meredith Barica.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd be happy to start off answering that question. And we also have two of our project managers who will be working closely with our construction crews on the line. But let me give you a little bit of information on my role at Eversource and the team I lead, which is our outreach team. And one of our primary roles, and as some of the audience members can attest, we've actually brought on a dedicated outreach individual for the Somerville project, is to make sure that we are in constant communication with the direct abutters, with city officials, and with police details and and our construction crews, so that everybody knows what is happening, when it is happening, and how it is happening. Safety first and always is Eversource's mantra, and we take that charge extremely seriously and want to make sure that abutters are well informed of all of our construction plans. So from an outreach perspective to neighbors and the community, my team and I will be literally in the neighborhood day in and day out once construction gets underway to make sure that people are safe and well informed. For some of the details you asked about, I'm going to hand the mic over, if the chair will allow, to Dwayne Boyce, who is our project manager.
Certainly, Dwayne. We can't hear you, Raisa. Do you see any indications of?
This is Raisa speaking. Dwayne is unmuted on his end and our end, so I'm not sure if there's an audio issue. This is Raisa speaking. Dwayne, can you hear us?
Madam Chair, if I may, perhaps if you'd allow, we could go on to the next question, and then hopefully we can get Mr. Boyce's audio working.
Certainly. Do other members of the board have, or John, did you have further questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have another question, and this is again directed towards the applicants. One thing I appreciate is my fellow board member McNeely's question about capacity and understanding how Eversource is looking towards capacity planning, and I heard contingency planning as well. This is a hypothetical, but it is a hypothetical of concern to me, and I believe for the residents of Somerville. So assuming that this this transformer installation and construction goes forward, if there are any unforeseen issues that arise during this construction process, does Eversource have any contingency plans to ensure uninterrupted electricity flow to Somerville? And if so, I'd love to hear about that, because obviously we're all hoping for the best here, but should things change, how would Eversource deal with those matters?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And through the chair, I would ask if Maya Benjamins could further expand on that answer.
Thank you. This is Maya Benjamins. That's a really good question. And I would say that all of our projects are designed and executed to maintain continuous service to all of our customers. Part of the reason why some projects take the time that they do is that we have to plan for what we call outages, or times where we can safely turn the system off to connect the new infrastructure. So with the timing, we can only do that in the spring or the fall, when we have much less demand on our system. If this project does not go into service in 2024, that like we're planning on, we will need to have some very detailed conversations with the city of Somerville on what we can do to make sure we maintain service to all of the customers. And it will primarily focus on the new customers coming online, but that is something that we're cognizant of and that we're working through, and we'll look to the city staff to help guide us. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Madam Chair, if I may make a comment as well, just for the record. So listening to the public testimony, listening to some of the elected officials speaking, whether in an official capacity or not, you know, I do share a general concern with this third transformer proposal. I mean, I know it needs to be done, so I don't consider that, you know, I don't mean to be an impediment to the process. You know, certainly that's not my intention. But you know, one thing I would recommend to Eversource for Somerville, as well as other communities, to ensure proper planning. I think it was mentioned that the Green Line extension was planned for quite a bit of time, and the Boynton Yards development and other developments around Union Square area, you know, are certainly something that have been under discussion. Therefore, you know, I would ask Eversource to continue to be a partner with the city of Somerville, with the residents, as well as other adjoining communities, to ensure that the electricity/energy needs are met. Not looking for a response. I just want this to be stated for consideration, and certainly appreciate Eversource's efforts to engage with the community, going above and beyond what was required in many areas. But we just hope that in the future, Eversource will be coming to us a little bit earlier, rather than with a dire situation, or as described, dire situation for 2024. So that's all I wanted to say, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I will just add to that. I have a number of questions for the Eversource team that I don't think are easy questions, which I will raise, but just to level set for everyone involved here. My understanding is that this plan, or that the need for this, and the question of somehow shielding or protecting from view the transformer in this location, has been part of the planning for Union Square since the adoption of the Union Square Master Plan, which was 7 years ago, almost to the day. So in terms of the city's opportunity to negotiate with Eversource on the relocation of that infrastructure, and Eversource's putting its intentions up front for various parties to respond, I think it is probably, I would imagine, largely on the city's side to not have addressed this earlier. And I will say, I don't think it is the role of this board to derail this necessary public infrastructure project, but I wholeheartedly support the comments that suggest that there could have been a more thoughtful and more comprehensive approach. And I think that we had a long lead time to do so. And that time is probably no longer with us. But certainly hear those comments, and certainly I think these projects are a long time in the making. So let that be a lesson to all of us, and also to everyone who came to provide comment, that, you know, when we do these neighborhood planning processes, I think they're important to get our one's foot in the door on these sorts of issues early at that stage before we are having difficult conversations like this one. Are there other comments or questions from, yes, Debbie?
I just wanted to add, Amelia, I wholeheartedly agree with your last statements there, but my question is around noise and humming, if there's any anticipation on what sort of noise might be coming out of the new transformer, and if that's mitigated by I know that there's going to be a building of some sort enclosing that, but if Eversource can speak to that a little bit.
Madam Chair, if I may. Yep, this is Meredith Barica. I think we do have our project manager, Dwayne Boyce, with us now. So I want to make sure if he is audible, he can answer the traffic question, and then we can get the noise question answered as well. And if Dwayne can lead that off. Oh, there you are, Dwayne.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Thank you.
All right, so the question was regarding construction activities.
Dwayne, if you and identify yourself for the record, thank you.
Sure, Dwayne Boyce, Senior Project Manager, Eversource.
Thank you.
All right, so regarding construction activities, the activities associated with this particular installation are largely within the footprint of the substation. We will be coordinating carefully with the city and abutters, like Meredith indicated. We will ensure that proper notice is given to for larger deliveries and any kind of invasive construction activities. But for the most part, we will be having most of the activity will be contained to the site, and we'll do our best to make sure that we minimize that impact.
Thank you, Dwayne. And I want to, and Madam Chair, through you, recognize our engineer, John Zico, who can speak to the question regarding the noise and the sound attenuation.
Thank you, Risa. Can you unmute Eric?
This is Risa speaking. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Risa speaking. Eric, I don't see an Eric.
I'm sorry, John, and the last name is Zico with a Z.
Thank you.
This is Risa speaking. John Zico was unmuted in the beginning.
Thank you. Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'll take that as yes. So thank you. My name is John Zico, Z-I-C-K-O. I'm the Director of Capital Projects Engineering at Eversource. And with regard to sound, the two transformers that are in there now are heavily sound treated, and this third one will be as well. We've engaged the services of an outside acoustical firm to take measurements of what is out there now, and then project what it would be after the proposed third transformer is added. And it is that it meets all of the state and local requirements for sound production or sound generation at the site. As a side note, and kind of empirically, some of these new transformers are so heavily sound treated, and this will be no exception, that you literally have to go up and touch the transformer to know that it's in operation, and that's something that really nobody in the general public should be doing. So that, again, that's been my experience. So, the numbers say one thing, and experience dictates another.
Thank you. Are there further questions from my colleagues? Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had one other follow-up about community benefits. So when you go into the online hosting capacity map, you see lots of red three-phase lines nearby. Can you speak to how this transformer may allow us to, have some more room on the lines to, say, add more solar to our roofs and stuff like that?
Thank you so much, Mr. McNeely. I will turn that over to Maya. If you could begin with that one, and then we'll see if any of our other experts can weigh in.
Could you please ask the question again?
Sure. When I take a look at the hosting capacity map in the area, I see lots of red lines, basically suggesting that there's not a lot of headroom to add solar panels to our roofs and stuff like that. The city has a goal of trying to green our buildings as much as possible, and a lot of the ways we do that is by creating generation on site that is clean and renewable. And I was wondering if this transformer might help us do more of that.
That's a great question, because this is an iterative process that we need to implement and really requires the input from our operations team. The transformer does give us more flexibility to take some of that energy back into the system. And what you're talking about is solutions that we're really thinking about that I would call behind the meter. And to solve electrification into the future, that's what our system planning team is looking carefully at, because we do actually look at solar panels and how they can address the need into the future. So if there is a situation where solar panels are coming online, we would put the necessary distribution infrastructure in to carry that type of energy to a place where we could utilize it. So that's just a matter of a conversation that we need to have with our system planning team, and then also then our operations team would upgrade as necessary to make sure that our system could handle it. It's kind of the same conversation that we have around electrical vehicle charging, if you think of it that way, because that is a pretty big additional load on the system. So we look at multiple ways to accomplish that. Do we upgrade the infrastructure for the entire street, or do we focus on a single house? Those types of things, but it's really a holistic thing that we need to talk about. And I would also say that we have been working with the City of Somerville staff about some of those issues and how we can work with the city to help offset some of those costs. Because I think that for us at Eversource, the concept of equitable energy is really important. So we're trying to figure out how we can support communities, particularly communities like environmental justice communities, be able to have access to electric vehicle charging and some other types of generation. So if that is the case, that the lines need to be upgraded, it's a conversation that we can continue to have with you to make sure that's addressed.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. And there's lots of moving parts to this, but obviously having that transformer in place will help, add some flexibility, as you said. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I hadn't gotten there, but that was great. I have a few questions I'd like to raise just quickly. I heard concerns from various parties, both about the screening being not opaque enough and too opaque. Is there consensus from community feedback on what the desired design direction is? That can be a question for Andrew or for the applicant team.
I would be happy to start. Andrew, if you would prefer.
Go ahead, Meredith.
Okay. Yep. And this is Meredith Baraka, and again, with our community outreach team. So one of the things we did here, and echo your sentiment, is, it's very difficult and challenging in any situation to get complete consensus. But what Eversource has done at other substations across Metro Boston is we have developed a community design process, whether it's public art or some kind of, in some situations, we're able to affix decorative items to the outside of the substation wall. It's site dependent. And we would be proposing to work with abutters, the Somerville Arts Council, neighborhood associations, and other individuals who have an interest in the design, the ultimate design of the art. And I know that has been a passion of some of the neighbors as well as Mr. McGinnis. And so what we do is we will gather a group of interested residents. We tend to use a focus group model, and it is iterative and it does take some time. But that's what we found to get the best outcome for each individual neighborhood and community. I also wanted to note, because I heard a couple of comments from residents about the Somerville Arts Council, and Eversource is prepared and very happy to enter into an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the Somerville Arts Council, so that it's very clear, roles and responsibilities and working with the Arts Council in the way that's best suited for Somerville. So I will leave it there, and I don't know if you have anything you would like to add, or I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Just responding to other comments we heard tonight, I cannot really imagine that there's a solution that would require future relocation of this substation that is not yet in the ground, but if you could confirm whether the intention is to have this in this location indefinitely, or if there would be any opening to revisit that sometime down the line when Union Square is further built out and that parcel is one of the remaining areas that could support additional development.
Thank you very much, Chair Aboff. Again, I know we've discussed this previously, and I will be happy to turn this over again to our subject matter expert, Maya Benjamins, to discuss, the constraints that we have with moving the substation. And we also have Dwayne Boyce here as well. So Maya, if you can start with that one.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. This is Maya Benjamins. Our plans right now are to keep this station in place. When we're looking at relocating infrastructure, we also have to keep, our goal is to protect our customers, or to think about the expense to our customers. Because if you think about it, we would have to completely rebuild the station somewhere else. We can't use the same equipment. And then all of the transmission and distribution lines that are connecting would also have to be relocated in the street. And the station serves a significant amount of load in both in Somerville and some in Cambridge, which we're looking at offsetting with other projects. So that's a significant expense that we don't have a justification with the state of Massachusetts, which would be the Department of Public Utilities, nor with ISO New England to move. And that is where we would look to the city of Somerville to offset that cost of relocating it, because it's not something that can be borne to the ratepayers if there isn't an issue with the substation. I will say the new station that's being built in Cambridge was not an existing station. It is a new station. And the way that it was undergrounded is that cost of undergrounding is being borne at the cost of the developer and being offset by a relationship with the city of Cambridge. So it's something that we grapple with, and we understand the concerns of the station being here. It has been here for, I think, at least 70 years. And we're looking at reinforcing all of our infrastructure across our entire territory. And the one piece that's really important for everyone to understand is that substations need to be close to the load growth. So wherever the load is, we preferably are within 2 miles. So we are looking at needing other substations. And to the question before, we have been working with the city and we'll find mutually acceptable sites for those. But in the right now, there are no plans to relocate the substation.
Thank you. One question I had about the plans that were shown is, on the one hand, I'm happy to hear that you plan to take down the barbed wire. On the other hand, I do want the transformers to be inaccessible. Could you talk a little bit about the security that is planned and the heights of the fences that you're considering? Anything to that effect?
Certainly, Madam Chair, and this is Meredith Barica again. We do have with us this evening our architect who designed the heights of the fencing. So I would like to turn it over, if you would allow me to Mr. Will Conley to answer that question about the heights and the screening and the security.
Thank you.
Good evening. This is Will Connolly. Yeah, so along Newton Street, we have an 8-foot tall fence. Currently, there's a 7-foot tall fence there, which has barbed wire. But by moving it up to an 8-foot tall fence, we're able to remove the barbed wire and provide a cleaner look for the station. And as you move further north on Newton Street, down the hill, it will transition into a precast concrete wall with a brick finish, which will be significantly higher, like 14 feet and up to 24 feet as it wraps around to the other side. And along Prospect Street, the fencing will be about 28 feet tall. So the site will be very secure. And all of the fencing meets all the federal requirements for anti-cut, anti-climb, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. And then my last question, I think, I hear that there's a huge amount of interest from the community in sort of what the final design and the arts coordination looks like. And I guess my question is, I would love to approve this project and get it moving because it seems like it is needed imminently. Can planning work progress in parallel with continued coordination with the community on the design process? Or can you just speak a little bit to sort of what your staging would look like of next steps after approval from this board? Assuming that we do require an MOU with the Somerville Arts Council and the expectation that that coordination be ongoing.
Yep, Madam Chair, this is Meredith Barica, and again, I'll be happy to begin with fielding that question. Typically what we do is we work in parallel with the construction process and the design process. And we work closely with the community. You know, the first, I can lay out the steps for you, or the steps that we followed in the past, and we're very open to new ideas of how to even encourage more community engagement. But typically what we do is we will work with the city and the neighborhood associations, the elected officials, and make sure that we have a catchment of community members who are living, working, playing in these neighborhoods, and who are going to really have to live and do today live with the substation, so that we can get a broad swath of community input. With that, we have typically had a series of iterative design sessions where we start, like you saw tonight, with an idea and within the constraints that we have to deal with. So we have, you know, understandably security and security constraints and setbacks with vegetation and things of that sort. So we lay out sort of the parameters that we can work with. And then we work with the community and we work with our architect to iterate on design. So, you know, is it maybe there could be a full mural on the side of the solid enclosure, or maybe you want panels of painting. And are they in one location in South Boston, we're doing a vinyl decal. And if you've been over to the Mystic substation over on Alfred Street, you'll see a big mural painted on that. So there's lots of different paths to choose as long as it fits within the parameters that we have to work with to make sure that our substation is safe and secure. And that process has taken upwards of a year because there are a lot of back and forth and coordinating with all the proper channels, the Arts Council and others, and setting agendas and making changes and going back until we get it right.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll note is just we will be keeping the public comment for this project open until the Friday before our next meeting because we have opened oral testimony. So we will keep open written public testimony until noon on May 12th, which will be to planning@somervillema.gov before our next meeting on May 18th. But it is my hope that we will be able to move this project forward at that meeting subject to further feedback. And I know that comments that colleagues of ours on the board will raise, our colleagues who are not here tonight will be two. One, a request or a requirement that any plantings included at the site be native plants. And two, a request that any brick appearing materials on the facade for this be full dimensional brick, not brick veneers. So if you could please consider those two items, which I believe colleagues of ours will raise and propose as conditions if they're not already written as draft conditions. I think we could be having clarity on those items will help us all be closer to moving this forward at our next meeting.
Madam Chair, this is Meredith Baraka. Just to clarify, we did get the feedback on the native plantings, and we're happy to add native plantings that are substation compliant, and we've already been working with our landscape architect to come up with a slate of possible plantings that fit that bill.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep.
All right, are there any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Raisa, did my earlier statement check the box for leaving written testimony open sufficiently, or do I need to restate it?
This is Raisa speaking. That was sufficient.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will move to continue this to our next meeting on May 18th, seconded by Jahan. Raisa, could you call the roll, please?
This is Raisa speaking. Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much to you and your team. I think we learned a lot and hopefully can move this forward without too much further delay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board.
All right, our next case will be 1 McGrath Highway, from which I am recused. So I will be leaving the meeting at this time and handing it over to my colleague, Jahan Habib. So I will leave you all here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have a great night. So before we get started, I just wanted to confirm with Raisa to make sure that we have a quorum present for the record.
This is Raisa speaking. There is a quorum right now.
Thank you very much, Raisa. So I would like to take up the matter of 1 McGrath Highway. Before I do that, I do want to mention that if we have a covenant that is under negotiation, then it is Planning Board's longstanding policy to wait for the covenant to be finalized before proceeding with the vote. Having said that, I do want to confirm with Raisa whether the applicant team is present and whether they have any presentations or updates for us at this time.
This is Raisa speaking. I do see Adam Dash's hand raised. Adam, I have unmuted you. Please let me know if you are presenting tonight and who will be the presenter if so.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street, Somerville, representing Summerbridge Hotel LLC. With me tonight are Chris Thomas of Summerbridge, Jason Diorio of JAL Hospitality Design LLC, Michael Mount, who's the architect, Michael Malinowski of Allen and Major Associates, who's the civil engineer, Beth Dermody of Allen and Major, the landscape architect, and Lorenzo Dantas of VHB, the traffic engineer. I sort of have a brief statement to make. We made our full presentation last time, and what we've done since then is answer questions. So I guess to Mr. Habib's comment about the development covenant, it was negotiated with the city solicitor. It has been executed and notarized by my client with the original hand delivered by me to the law department on the 20th of April. The mayor was on vacation that week. The mayor came back. It has sat on her desk and she was out today and hasn't signed it yet, but it's done and I've done all I can do, and it's just a ministerial act that the mayor has to sign it. So I don't think that's a holdup. It's dated April 20th and the applicant is on board with it. So it's in final form. It is what it is. So at any rate, we were before you on April 20th seeking site plan approval and special permits for hotel use and parking relief at the 1 McGrath Highway property, which is located partly in Somerville and partly in Cambridge, if you recall. As you know, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a variance for the sod build out on April 19th, and that decision has since issued since we saw you last. On April 20th, the Planning Board left the public written record open till April 28th and then continued the matter till tonight. On April 20th, the Planning Board asked some questions about the sustainability aspects of the project, and the applicant filed answers to those questions on April 25th, as well as correcting a typo in the sustainable questionnaire that a Planning Board member astutely caught. Thank you for that. We have our team here tonight to answer any other questions which may remain. As you heard on April 20th and in subsequent written comments that were provided by the deadline, there's widespread support for this project as it will remove a blight at the city's entrance, provide a ramp connection from McGrath Highway and the Grand Junction path to the new Green Line Extension community path behind the property, reduce the number of curb cuts by working with the abutter at 15 McGrath, and other benefits we previously discussed. Our hope is that after years of collaboration and work with all the stakeholders and all the support we've received, that the Planning Board would see fit to approve the request tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dash. I wanted to take this opportunity to see whether my fellow Planning Board members have any questions for the applicant team or staff. See, Emily has joined us as well. Welcome, Emily. And would love to open up the floor for any questions or comments. Yes, Michael.
Waving at me. Yeah.
I'm actually raising my hand for Member Schuster.
I apologize, Member Schuster. You were, now I understand what Chair Capuano has to deal with respect to the panels covering you. Please go right ahead, and I apologize for ignoring you.
All good, Mr. Chair. I've had the experience of presenting on Zoom at work, and you click the share screen, and all of a sudden you lose everybody, and you're totally disoriented. So I want to raise a related question to something I raised at the last meeting on this project, and it's all prefaced with a strong sense of support from me. I think the project's great. The location makes a lot of sense. So that, I really am totally inclined to support it and hope it can move forward quickly. The question is just back to the couple of questions I had related to the art space, and this might almost entirely be for us, the city side, either the rest of the board or the city staff here. I still left that discussion just not being able to, I think, literally picture what a 6th floor cinema in a hotel would even conceptually be. The clarification at the last meeting around how procedurally my understanding was that the actual subcontractor arts group that might run the space just couldn't be determined at this point in the process. So there's a way in which we can't even exactly know what that cinema space would be used for. I think that was helpful for me. I'm still struggling to really picture even a possible future for what it would be. And one question I thought of in advance of this was, to city staff, if you might have an example, is there an example of this in Somerville that's happened before, where that's on a, buried in a different floor of a big project, and who runs such a thing, and how do people in the community even know about it? Yeah, that's what's on my mind.
Thank you, Member Schuster. Mr. Chair, through you, Emily Hutchings, a senior planner. So I'm not familiar off the top of my head with examples that would be similar to this one in Somerville. I do understand that the concept is not necessarily unique, that projects like hotels will sometimes work with third parties to have art spaces that may include gallery space, may include cinema space, and that third party is responsible for the programming, for engagement and communication with anyone who they would like to market the use to. So I think it would be up to whoever the applicant found to work with. I think the crux of the matter here is that it is a valid arts and creative enterprise space as established in the Somerville zoning ordinance. And so that's the primary concern and objective.
If I can add to that, Mr. Habib, Mr. Acting Chair.
Absolutely.
For the record, as Emily just stated, hotels have, and I think my client stated this the last hearing, that hotels have third-party operators running restaurants in them. That's often how the restaurants operate. The inspectional services, it has an advisory opinion on arts and creative enterprise spaces like this that requires it to be a third-party operator. And so that this isn't something that's our choice. This is just the ISD's interpretation of the ACE wording in the zoning. I would note that, for instance, the 15 McGrath Lab building next door as ACE space, I believe that they're talking about an architect's office in the lab building. So it's a completely separate use with a completely separate tenant. I assume they don't have that tenant yet. And how that would operate in a lab, which is not an office building, is something that they would work out, just like something we would work out with our operator. I mean, we're going to need a certificate of occupancy at the end of the day. And to do that, we'll have to comply with all of the approval procedures, and that case is one of them. So we don't have a tenant as we sit here today because we don't even have an approved project until you vote on it. So there's really no point in going out there and finding a tenant right now. But we're certainly willing, capable, and happy to comply. And I was in a restaurant in Maine when I was looking at colleges. My daughter, I think, was over in Bowdoin, and they had a restaurant, and in the restaurant is a movie theater. And I was like, well, that was a little strange, but you can take your food and then you can take it in and watch a movie. The movies run at 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and it was a little strange, but I mean, it was kind of cool. And it was just two different uses and two different operators in one space. So that's the plan. It complies with the zoning as interpreted by inspectional services. We'll figure out who the tenant is, but we're very excited about the concept. I think that Ms. Thomas explained in a lot of detail last
time. So, Mr. Chair, good if I chime in, but super helpful, super helpful. Totally get it. And almost the entirety of what's on my mind is like for my own learning and just thinking about how this applies to future projects going forward. So maybe two teeny questions following this, and then I'm done. So am I right that, again, this is on the Somerville side, like the ordinance allows that ACE space to be commercial use or nonprofit? So it could be just like a small boutique cinema on the 6th floor of the hotel, and that's for-profit cinema. That would be fine. That's compliant. So I think initially I was somehow picturing it not necessarily that way as more of like a nonprofit community space, but I guess that theoretically could also satisfy the ACE requirement. I see head nods. I guess the final little piece of this is just to the project folks. I'm just curious for any details on why cinema. Just is there any thinking about how that integrates with the project in a unique way that's different from some other type of arts?
This is Adam Dash again. I would bring in Chris Thomas from Summerbridge Hotel, who could probably better explain that. I think she talked about it last time. It's a very cool and exciting project. We felt it worked well. Chris, are you there? Or is he allowed to speak?
Risa, do you mind double checking to make sure that the gentleman is unmuted?
It's Christine.
This is Risa speaking. I do not see a Christie.
Oh, Christine.
It's Christine Thomas. I'm sorry to interrupt. I believe I've just unmuted Christine Thomas. So Christine, or Chris, I'm sorry, you should be unmuted on our end. You may still need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, this is an art-centric hotel to start with. So I explained that we are gallery space driven on the ground floor of the hotel. There's a separate elevator up to the upper level. We visualize that it will be a high energy art theater, which I think is really appropriate for this neighborhood. That Moxie brand that I spoke about is very youth driven and unconventional, and so we're visualizing a really engaging space to be used not only by guests, but I think at least as much by the community as a fun place to go, meet up with friends, enjoy some food and drink, see some worthwhile art, cinematic art, and we're not opposed to seeing presentation art in that space as well. So it's we're going to be really careful about how we proceed with this, because as I think I said the last time, if we've had experiences where there's any leased space, if you've got the wrong tenant, it blows back right at us. Do you know what I mean? They're quick to think that whatever is happening, get on the phone and call Marriott and say, God, that was a terrible experience, and I want my money back because it spoiled my trip. So we're super careful about how we move forward, and we want this to be an asset to the project that we're creating, and we're committed to that.
Appreciate it. I'll go to Maya.
Mr. Schuster, does that answer all your questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. All set.
Thank you. And I also wanted to add that you're welcome to ask as many questions as you like. As a planning board member, you have that right to do so. Just wanted to take this moment to see if any other fellow planning board members have questions or clarifications, comments. Mr. McNeely, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was for me this time. I just wanted to quickly state to the applicant that I appreciate that they followed up on the materials. I know I was being a little bit of a stickler last meeting, but I think a thorough and complete application is appropriate. So thank you again.
And then Adam Dash, I thank you for pointing that out, especially the typo in the questionnaire. We just missed that number. So I want it to be correct. So thank you for being so diligent.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McNeely. I just wanted to see if there are any other questions, comments, or items that need to be addressed from the planning board membership side. Yes, Ms. Howard Easton, please.
Thank you. I just wondered if Emily probably can confirm. I know Attorney Dash did indicate that the form of the covenant was signed off and approved, and just if the city could just confirm that it is just, waiting for the mayor to sign and no issues with any changes that might come down relative to that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, Emily Hutchings again. I can confirm that executive director Tom Galagani sent me a message earlier this evening stating it is simply sitting on the mayor's desk waiting for her signature. And she was unexpectedly out of the office today. So I believe that's the reason it's still there.
Thank you.
This is Raisa speaking, Mr. Chair. I do see Councillor Scott wishing to speak on this matter. If you would like, I can unmute him.
By all means, Raisa, would you please give Councillor Scott the floor, please?
Councillor Scott, you have been unmuted.
Oh, thank you very much, and I appreciate the courtesy. Different this time, JT Scott, Ward 2 City Councilor, 269 Washington Street. I appreciate the chance. I know I missed the April 20th meeting. I apologize for that. I had another meeting that night. But to Board Member Pfister's question, that question of restricting the use to a nonprofit use would be something that could potentially be covered in a covenant or in a community benefits agreement. I'm glad to hear that a covenant's been negotiated, but I know I myself, none of the community members who are particularly interested in it have seen that document. So I suppose I'll be doing a public records request tomorrow to obtain it. My question for planning staff and for you, although again, there's a lot of public interest in this project and support for many of the benefits it provides, including the ramp and the connectivity to the community path. My question is just procedurally, I went back and checked, and the last neighborhood meeting I held about this project was in October of 2021. For this modification or this new application, I'm just trying to understand why a neighborhood meeting wouldn't be required as part of the process. So if anybody on staff or the board could help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I'd like to see if staff has some information or background details that can help us all understand a little bit better.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I don't have an immediate answer for that. This is a project, I'll admit, I inherited from one of our other planners, Charlotte Lease, who was working on this prior to her moving to a different position within the city. I don't know if the applicant may have some additional information on that, or I can follow up.
This is Adam Nash again. Yeah, absolutely. The neighborhood meetings were held as required, the one prior to the UDC and the one process and the one post UDC process. And that's the process. And then we file the DRA and we go through this, it goes through the city departments and then we get to here. It's taken a very long time to get to here. I think I went through all that timeline on April 20th. A lot of that had to do with some of the complications with mobility, being that this is a property in 2 municipalities and on the state highway, which is in 2 different MassDOT districts. So it took a lot of coordination between various city and state entities to get to a point where mobility would provide the CRM so we could come to see you. I would say the project hasn't really changed in any material way since the last neighborhood meeting post UDC. It was really just a matter of getting the materials and getting that certificate of required materials sign off from departments, which include sustainability and PSUF and of course mobility, which took a long time. And then we finally get on an agenda to see you. So wasn't the foot dragging on anybody's part, and really there was nothing additionally I would say to really talk about because nothing really had changed since the that neighborhood meeting. It just took a long time from that point to get to here. So that's all that it is.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Absolutely, Councillor Scott, please go ahead.
Thank you. It's been a complicated process with the project. There was originally, I think, some rights granted in 2018, approvals in 2020. Again, I just want to make sure we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's here. It was a bit surprising to me that 2021 hearings were part of or 2021 were part of the same application. So if it can be confirmed that those are part of the same flow and there's no I guess I'm looking for the word some expiration date on those meetings, I'm happy to, happy to express that, yes, in fact, there was a great deal of support from the community here for the project. And I look forward to seeing what private agreement our mayor has negotiated.
Yeah, and I would notice, Adam Dash, again, that it is the same application. In fact, the P&Z docket number that we're in front of you on is P&Z 21-028 because it was filed in 2021. So it's the same application. It's just taken us a really, really long time to get in front of you, and that's unfortunately the way that it went. But it's basically the same project. It just took a long time to get from point A to point B through the new process. And I would also note during the middle of the process, the city's submission requirements changed, and we had to reconfigure and resubmit the entire application all over again under the new submittal guidelines because we were told we had to do that, and that took some time. It's the problem. There's just been a lot of flux in the process and the rules, and as these projects sort of started before the changes, they kind of have to keep up with it, and that's why we'd love to end this before something else changes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your courtesy. Godspeed.
Thank you so much, Councilor Scott, and also Mr. Dash. Thank you for providing the background information. Emily, if you wouldn't mind for our next board meeting, just to provide us with a confirmation for the record, I think that's going to be helpful. Also, Rice, I see Representative Connolly has his hand raised, and I want to make sure that we can recognize the good representative as well.
This is Rice speaking. Representative Mike Connolly, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, I'll be very brief. I was here already, and I realized and noticed that this item was also on the agenda, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to really express my support, in particular for the ramp that is being provided for in this arrangement. I was thinking about how it was actually over 4 years ago I had the opportunity to organize a meeting with then Transportation Secretary Stephanie Pollock to sort of put the MBTA on notice that we had this wonderful vision. And I really want to say thank you to all the advocates, the applicant, as well as the city of Somerville for working on this. This will be, a wonderful amenity that will make the community path better. And as a representative of Cambridge and Somerville, this is an area that certainly seems kind of dilapidated. And so it's exciting to think about how this new development can really offer some new opportunity. And really just in closing, want to say congratulations to everyone who has pushed for this ramp, because it's certainly not easy adding to our transportation and multimodal infrastructure. And this just seems like a tremendous outcome. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Connolly. I really appreciate your thoughts as well. Rice, just a quick question regarding new information. Do you believe that there has been new information provided as part of this application, and whether we need to open up the hearing for public testimony at this time?
This is Rice speaking. I do believe new information was presented and public testimony should be taken today.
Thank you so much, Rice. In that case, I'd like to open up public testimony, and I'd like to see if anyone who is in support of this application, if you would please exercise the raise hand button, and I believe Raisa will call on the order that she sees you. Also, please, for the record, state your name and residential address before providing the testimony.
This is Raisa speaking. Jason Stockman is the first hand I see. Jason, you have been unmuted.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak in support of the project. I want to echo what Representative Connolly said, that the connection between the Grand Junction path and the Somerville Community Path is something that me and my neighbors will welcome with great enthusiasm. I'm at 7 Cornelius Way in the Linden Park neighborhood. We're going to benefit from having the Grand Junction Trail nearby. I have a 2-year-old kid who I would love to take up the Grand Junction Trail and have a seamless connection to the Somerville Community Path so we could access Davis Square and points to the west. And a lot of my neighbors feel the same way. So really, I can't express how excited we are that this design element is included in the project scope. Really, Eastern Cambridge and Eastern Somerville, I think, are underserved by green spaces and parks. And this new path is going to be a great way to redress that historical problem. I'd also emphasize that the Boston area has a lot of great multi-use paths, but suffers from a lack of connectivity between them. And so really connecting these two important paths is I think, of paramount importance and will improve the utility of both resources for everyone in the community. And it will help commuters who are using Somerville Community Path access Kendall Square, thereby improving mode shift away from driving and toward pedestrian and bicycle access. So it's really important economically as well. The only design feature I might request is some attention to the plantings along this path connection. Maybe adding tree cover to provide some shade in the summer so that as people are pedaling across up to the ramp, there's some thought given to the vegetation and especially tree canopy. But in any form, we'll greatly value and appreciate this connection, and just want to thank everyone for their hard work making this hopefully come to fruition in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Rice, I wanted to double check to see if you see anyone else who has their hand raised in support of the application.
This is Rice speaking. I see another hand raised for Lynn Wiseman. Lynn, you have been unmuted. You are self-muted on your end.
Hi, thanks so much. I just want to echo what a lot of people have said, in support
This
of
is
this
Rice
project.
speaking. I'm really sorry to interrupt. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Oh, thanks. My name is Lynn Weissman. My address is 112 Belmont Street, Somerville. I am the co-president of the Friends of the Community Path, along with Alan Moore. We've been working with this developer for a long time. Originally they didn't even know about this connection, and then they opened up their project to making this possibility happen, to build the ramp to, the spur to MBTA land, even when, the spur hasn't been built yet, but it's just, a couple of hundred feet from the property. The MBTA is, sounds like they're getting ready to make this happen too. And I just want to really commend the developer for being willing to do that and to really see the value of this property, where it sits on the green line, on the bus lines, and on the ped and bike routes. So, we really appreciate that. We appreciate the idea of having an art space in the neighborhood. We hope that will also help bring people, more users along these paths, and, just pedestrians and, bike users. So thanks to the board for all your due diligence, and again, for looking at this property as a whole, even though it's straddling two cities. So thanks so much. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you very much.
This is Rice speaking. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Thank you so much, Risa. So I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the testimony, and I'm going to open up the testimony to those who are opposed or otherwise want to express concerns. Similar to before, please raise your hand. Please use the raise hand function. And also, please make sure that you state your name and also residential address for the record.
This is Rice speaking. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Risa. I'll give it one more moment to see if anyone decides to raise their hand before closing off testimony. I do see a raised hand, Risa. I'm not sure if you see it on your side.
This is Rice speaking. I see Jim McGinnis. Jim, you have been unmuted.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm using a different computer here, and I'm actually speaking in support. I don't know if that's possible. I just want to repeat my support for what Mike Connolly and Lynn Wiseman said. This is a really crucial connection between two important bike paths, and it's so difficult in many cases to bridge these gaps between when you have private property involved. And so I think it's remarkable that the Summer Bridge developer has been willing to be so forward-thinking. And so I can't really speak to the merits of the project otherwise, but I do think this connection is really crucial, and it's something that we need to try to facilitate. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave us, I just want to double check if you could share your residential address. I think you mentioned your name.
I'm sorry. It is 26 Bow Street, Somerville. Once again.
Thank you. Thank you. And Raisa, in instances where we have a member of the community who's speaking in support after the testimony has been closed off, would this be entered into the public record, or should we invite Jim to provide a written testimony just to ensure that his testimony is included as part of the official record?
This is Raisa speaking. I feel that you reopened that same testimony, so it counts. If you wanted to double, triple check it, then yes, you can definitely have Jim send it, the public testimony to planning@somervillema.gov.
Jim, if you wouldn't mind, just to make sure that we capture your words accurately, if you don't mind sending a written testimony as well, just to be sure. We want to hear your voice. We want to make sure it counts. We would really appreciate it.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you very much. So again, going back to those opposed or want to express concern, we want to make sure that we also capture your thoughts. I am seeing none. Raisa, are you seeing anyone on your side?
This is Raisa speaking. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for confirming. So since we are not going to be taking a vote, I would like to keep the written testimony open until noon, Friday, May 12th. And I ask the members of the public to send written comments to planning@somerville.ma.gov, G-O-V, so that way we can include this matter before our next planning board meeting that's going to be on the 18th of May. I also wanted to go back to the members of the board. Wanted to see if there are any other questions, comments, items that you would like to address or discuss with either the applicant or the staff. I'm seeing none. In that case, I just wanted to make one comment to the applicant team, Mr. Dash and the rest of the team. You know, we certainly appreciate the long duration that this application has taken, and we appreciate your continued cooperation, support with working with the planning staff, the board here, as well as the members of the community. We certainly are grateful for the initiation of this project in a part of Somerville will be undergoing redevelopment, and I just want to provide my gratitude and thank you so much for again coming out here again, presenting, being willing to take questions and provide clarifying answers to the board as well as members listening in. Great. So if there are no other matters, I'm going to go ahead and move to continue the discussion of 1 McGrath Highway to the meeting on May 18th, seconded by Michael. Raisa, would you please call the roll?
Yes, this is Raisa speaking. Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Raisa, for the roll call. I believe we do not have any other open items at this time for this meeting. If that is indeed the case, Raisa, do you mind confirming whether we've covered everything that's listed in the agenda?
This is Raisa speaking. There are no other items on the agenda.
Thank you very much. In that case, I will now move to adjourn the planning board meeting, seconded by Michael. Would you please call the roll call vote, Raisa?
This is Raisa speaking. Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Debbie Howard Easton,
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining in on today's planning board meeting. We will be meeting again later on in May, and I hope to see everyone again. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Take care.
Good job, Jahan.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.